Okay, thank you everybody for joining us tonight. I would like to welcome our friends from across the water in the Isle of Man and our friends from Rochdale as well. They're not so far away. Tonight is our battle, and we have Caroline Colgate to judge all our images tonight. We will be putting everybody on mute, obviously, apart from Caroline. So everybody should be on mute, but we'll make sure that everybody's on mute whilst the judging's going on. Okay, Michael, if you could.
That's all done.
And we'll start.
Okay, well, perhaps just before we start, I could say something to you all.
That'd be good.
Thank you very much for inviting me to judge your competition this evening. It's always nice to visit different clubs, and this is the Zoom is certainly a facility whereby people can see lots of different images from various parts of the country. So as I'm completely new to all of you, I thought I'd better perhaps just say something about my methodology and what I'm looking for in the pictures. Well, generally, when it comes to a competition at this level, inter-club competition, generally everything is pretty much technically spot on. There may be a few sort of minor blips here and there, but what else do you look for? You have to go beyond that sort of technical ability. So then I'm sort of looking at sort of the way you've presented the image. If you've used any filters or any techniques, is it in harmony with what I feel the image is trying to tell me? But most importantly for me is expressive quality, and that's how I connect with the image. Now, it may be something that absolutely horrifies me. It may be the most ugliest and most revolting and awful picture that I've ever looked at in my life. But if it moves me and I can connect with it, then it will go a long way towards getting the top marks. So as I say, I'm just really looking for that sort of strong feeling that I'm there, I'm standing in the person's shoes, looking at that scene, and I'm feeling something. So that sort of brings me nicely on to the marking. And I did have an email discussion with Mike beforehand, and I sort of said, you know, what is your scoring range? Because perhaps every federation is different. Certainly in the Southern Federation, which is where I belong to, this year we're saying we want the judges to spread the marks a little bit more. And by that we mean going down to either between 6 and 10 or 12 and out of 20, depending on how clubs score. So this evening I will be going down to 12 as a warning now. And yes, some clubs, when you say that, they go, you can kind of feel this sharp intake of breath. And really we're doing that because it's relative. You know, if it was an absolute standard like you're passing an exam, then it wouldn't matter how many images get 20 because you're up against a certain standard, but this is all relative. So the best images this evening will get the 20s, and the less better images from my perspective, not necessarily from the perspective of another judge, will be getting the lower scores. So that's just something very, very briefly about my methodology and the way I'm going to approach it. So without further ado, let's enjoy some of these wonderful images.
Right. Do you want to have a run through all of them first of all, just to remind you and let the members know what they're looking at?
I think it would be nice for the members to see them. Yes, absolutely.
Super. Right, let's hit the right button and see what happens. Hopefully it's that one, but we'll find out in a moment.
Okay.
Right. Okie doke. Are we sitting comfortably?
I think so.
Right. Well, let us begin.
Excellent.
Blink of an eye.
Yeah, what really appeals to me about this picture is the fact that generally there's a kind of sense of movement across the whole of the picture. You know, when you look at it closely, sort of none of the wings appear to be sharp and the eyes isn't quite sharp, but just where that beak is going into the water, just the tip of that is absolutely pin sharp. And I sort of really strongly connect with that bit because it's just as the bird is going into the water. Generally as well, the background nicely out of focus and quite a harmonious colour between the kingfisher and its background. So I think generally it's a very, very competent piece of photography. And we'll start that one with a 17, please.
Right button in the right place. 17. I'm not going to give the names out yet because I think I might just give a bit too much away. Female orange-tipped butterfly.
Fills the frame very nicely, and in fact, perhaps for my taste, it fills it too large. And I just wonder whether a little bit more space around the whole of the butterfly would just give the image that little bit more room to breathe. I feel a little bit claustrophobic when I look at it. There's sort of no real space for the butterfly to sort of fly into. But generally, I think the textures and the colours and the detail on the wings, I think, is beautiful. And I think the plane of focus is absolutely spot on as well. If I had any other sort of comment to make, it would probably be that the white flowers on which the butterfly is sitting are just a little bit bright. There may be a tendency there for them to be burning out a little bit. And as such, it's pulling my attention away from that central section of the butterfly. A 14 for that, please.
18. Emptress.
Yeah, really thoughtful sort of pose that she's creating there. And generally there are some other images coming up in the competition this evening where the light on the model is really very, very strong. Here overall, the whole thing is subdued. Now that may be the kind of impression that you wanted to give, that kind of dark, mysterious sort of alluring feel to it. And I think that could be highly appropriate for the chair and the background. But I think I would like to have seen just a little bit more light on the face, just so there's that difference between your model and the background there. I think for my taste, she's sort of disappearing into the background just that little bit too much. It's a little bit flat overall, but I like that thoughtful pose. And I think, you know, the hands and the nails and everything are absolutely beautiful, and the kind of relaxed feel that she's got, and she's definitely sort of alluring, and you're kind of thinking she definitely has got that air of mystery about her. So I think on that level the picture works, but the lighting for me perhaps isn't quite as strong as it could have been. 15, please.
Snail hoverfly.
Wonderful, wonderful detail, beautiful all over this picture. And I really like the background as well. There's that hint of the purples and the mauves coming through, which are in complete harmony with the flower on which the hoverfly is sitting. So that sort of just as continuity of what you're seeing in the foreground taking through into the background is absolutely delightful. And also, if you look carefully at the eye of the hoverfly, it's a very, very similar tone and colour to sort of a band of darker purple, almost a sort of brown right behind that eye. And again, I think that juxtaposition really shows off this insect to great effect. It's one I'd like to see again, please.
We'll hold that one. Misty Woods.
Yeah, wonderful to just allow yourself to walk through these woods. You know, can you kind of put yourself there and think, you know, there's a little bit of mystery, there's a little bit of intrigue and some mood coming into this shot. There's quite a lot of bright light on the right hand side, and perhaps for me that's drawing my eye away from that central path. That's where the picture is leading me to. It's down that center and sort of just curving away to the left there, and yet, you know, I'm kind of being pulled out a little bit on the right. So I kind of feel that either you might want to perhaps darken that side down a little bit. You might want to try cropping as well. I think cropping might be a shame, because then you would lose that wonderful tree and that beautiful shape against that sort of brighter light. So, you know, just things to sort of bear in mind. But overall, I think it's a very powerful, evocative and moody image. 16, please.
16. Compass spiral.
Yeah, quite an intriguing picture, and certainly I'm kind of being drawn down into this spiral, and obviously it reminds me of the shape of a snail, and it kind of takes you to the beach, and it takes you sort of all to sort of wonderful places. And here's the compass, and maybe it's pointing me towards the beach. Maybe I'm missing the beach so much at the moment. Living kind of in the middle of the land, as it were, I'm not seeing the seaside. So for me, it's got that kind of powerful connection. But beyond that, I'm struggling a little bit with how it fits in with the rest of this competition. I think it's a fantastic effect that you've created here, but I wonder whether actually it might form part of a picture where you're kind of putting lots of different things together. I think it would add something to that, but on its own, for me, unfortunately, this one doesn't stand up quite as strongly as some of the others. 13.
13. Trend.
Wonderful, wonderful detail. Really, the texture and the detail on the feathers is absolutely superb. And I'm also enjoying that little bit of twigs or straw or whatever it is that the wren is sitting on. And there's a lovely sort of diagonal line implied through this picture, sort of, you know, from the straw going up towards the beak and out towards the top of the picture. So I think there's a lovely line through here that really helps it. And that brown bird against that green background, again, is absolutely delightful. It's one I'll see again, please.
Hold that one. What's the moment? It's something's just disappeared on me. See what happened then. Well, I'll try again. Hold. And moving on. Underwater kingfisher.
Yeah, interesting to see the detail underneath the water here, and to look at how the bird appears once all the water has sort of gone through its feathers and everything. You know, normally we see these in sort of such bright high color, but here it's muted a little bit because presumably we're underwater. And the little fishes sort of swimming to and fro as well. And there's, you know, 4 of them have got away, but unfortunately one of them has managed to land itself into the beak of this kingfisher. And you can just imagine that the next few shots will be as it dives down and comes back up again. So again, I think it's well done and a competent piece of photography. 16, please.
That's 16.
16, yes.
16. Norfolk Dawn.
Yeah, I think with dawn or, you know, sunrise or sunset, I think there's kind of magical moments, and there's a lovely sort of quiet feeling here as the sun is coming up. And I think there's always that challenge to what to get into the foreground. And here you've got some trees. Some of them you can sort of see through the detail of them, and you can see the shapes and things of the leaves to a certain extent. But I feel that the ones on the right-hand side are sort of quite blocked out. I'm not saying you should be getting detail in them, but I'm talking about the shapes themselves. And I think some of the best sunrise and sunset pictures are those where you really get some interesting shapes as silhouettes. And for me, the left-hand side of this picture and the shapes of those trees works far more strongly than the right. I think that right-hand side is just a little bit of disappointing. But what I enjoy about the picture is that sort of cloud bank that you've got at the top, and you can just see the light picking up on the underneath of those clouds. And I think that area is absolutely delightful. A 14 for that, please.
14. Princess Brianna.
Yeah. a really strong eye connection. You know, when I think whenever we look at pictures of people and portraits, we are instantly drawn to their eyes. And when you view this image, she's got those eyes that, you know, wherever I move around the room, they're going to follow me. They are so piercing. And I like that. I think that's really good. She also appears to be so confident too, really in control of everything. She doesn't look nervous or apprehensive. You know, she is a young queen in the making, and a beautiful, beautiful pool of light on her, lovely sort of skin, and the color, the brown all the way through this image, although, you know, the background is brown as well, but her hair and her dress and everything shows up so strongly against it. I promise I'm not going to hold them all back, but this is another one I'd like to see again, please.
Okay, hold Brianna. You had Cardiff.
Yeah, there's a very, very strong glow to this picture. And I'm really drawn to the warmth of the building there with the clock tower and everything. It sort of looks an interesting building as well. Lots of fascinating architectural details. So I thought I want to go off and have a wander around there. And that's in quite a contrast with the left-hand side that appears to be far more commercial, maybe shops and restaurants and that sort of thing. So I think it sort of shows an interesting slice of life in this particular city. Overall, it's bright throughout the image. Maybe a bit of HDR coming through into this picture, but I don't think it's overdone. It hasn't been overcooked. For me, I think it's a very good piece of architectural town photography. 17, please.
17. Fill out.
Yeah, hopefully he's done enough that he's got the ball out of the bunker. And, you know, congratulations to you for catching that little bit of sand that's being flicked up by the shot that he's making. So overall, I think the composition is very, very sound. I think for me, some of the issue I had with this picture is the quality and the detail, especially on the skin. It's sort of feeling as if it's breaking up just a little bit and sort of pixelating. And I think that's a shame because compositionally it's strong, but technically I think it's being let down somewhat. 14, please.
14. Don't mess with me.
Yeah, super, super lighting. And again, another strong portrait picture where, you know, he is connecting with me very, very well. And, you know, when you look at the quality of the lighting across this, it's superb. Both sort of sides of the face are lit, but there is that kind of dark, mysterious feel about him. And there's that kind of gangster feel. And, you know, the gun resting on the shoulder or on the arm, you know, the finger on the trigger, I can see that he's kind of ready for business, isn't he? He's just pausing, he's looking at me, and then he's going to go to work, as it were. So a very, very strong portrait. And that one is an 18, please.
18. Abandoned.
Yeah, some people might say, well, there's actually not very much in this picture. And that's true. But I feel it's got a lovely quality and a lovely feel to it. You've got these sort of strong diagonal lines, and you've got sort of some implied triangles being made by those masts and the wires coming down from them. And then you've also got some sort of another implied triangle on the actual boat itself, on the top part of it. And you've got this lovely sort of centered light around the vessel. And you've got the sort of wonderful dark clouds and just a very, very simple base. And you can kind of almost imagine this as a painting. You know, I can see this on the wall somewhere. I think it's simple, but for me, it's very effective. Another 18, please.
18. Steampunk.
Yeah, another confident young lady, quite happy to pose for the camera. And there is that connection with her, but for me, perhaps it's not quite as strong as some of the other portrait images. I feel there's quite a lot of light behind her as well, where you've got the light sort of coming in from those side windows in the cloisters area. There's some very, very bright patches behind her. And in some ways, I'm looking at that perhaps in preference to her. I'm having to force my eye back to look at her. So I think that's a little bit unfortunate. I'm also looking at the picture and thinking, is it just not quite square? I just feel it's tipping slightly down towards the left-hand side. So I think a little bit of straightening and maybe some selective darkening of the areas behind her would just help to make her stand out more boldly against that background. 15 for that, please.
15. That way.
Yeah, it's one that really made me laugh. It's fantastic, isn't it? You can just imagine you've got to the edge of a path somewhere, you're not quite sure which direction to go. You're looking at your map, you're kind of talking to who you're with, and you're sort of saying, which way? He's saying it's that way. Thank you, little bird. Super humorous little shot, but I think it works so very well indeed. 17.
Our Gracie.
Yeah, I think it's always a challenge when you come across a subject like this, because you need to sort of put your own signature on it. And I think sort of showing her dominant against that sky, I think is superb, because you can sort of see her outline. You've also got the kind of microphone there. So you immediately get that connection with what she was and what she did. So I think on that level, the picture works. I think also having the sort of dark cloud behind it, overall, it's a sort of very low key image. And I think that's sort of appropriate too. I think the issue I have with it is that the lighting is so somber on her face, especially around the eye sockets. And for me, I think that just spoils the connection somewhat. I'm sort of looking at the mask and I'm kind of wanting to see above the eyes, because that's all we see of people these days. And for me, that's just perhaps not quite there. 13, please.
13. Orvis.
Yeah, I really, really enjoyed this picture. I think just the connection between the bird and the gentleman here is superb. And I love the shape of the beak and the nose of the chap. And the birds in the background, the three up in the sky, and that sort of tower between the two of them, I think just sort of brings everything together. I think the lighting is suitably somber. Overall, there's that wonderful sort of grey, blue tone across it, and yet in the gentleman's face, absolutely beautiful lighting. There's no two ways of, you know, if you want me to look somewhere first, I'm looking straight at him. I'm then connecting with the bird through his eye line. Superb image. I'd like to see it again, please.
Yeah, we'll hold that one. Dipper by Waterfall.
Quite different to the last picture, and just takes your mind and your eye time to sort of settle down into it. But I like the dappled effect behind it. One assumes that it's the water or a waterfall, and the dipper's just there. You've got a lovely lot of insects in the beak there, and again some sort of good diagonal lines through the picture. And you know, similar tone on the rock to the bird, but again I think that works. And the outline of the bird against that background is very, very strong indeed. And there's space and room for the bird to fly into and for the image to breathe. And that one, 17, please.
17. Seeing the Light. Yeah,
I like the mood that's created here. It's a very sort of quiet, contemplative scene. And on that level, I really am attracted to this picture. There's a wonderful ray of light coming across his face, and the rest of it is sort of suitably in kind of shadow. I did think to myself that, you know, it's quite challenging to get the light on him and also to handle that very, very strong lighting coming through that grid. And for me, the light on that grid, it is burning out a little bit. And I just wondered whether maybe just cropping a couple of those squares in might just reduce that large spans of brightness on the left-hand side. And you would still get that feeling of the rays falling on him. You'd still get the feeling that he's by the window. But I think the emphasis and the lighting would be thrown back on him just that little bit more strongly. But nevertheless, as I say, for its message, I think it's strong. And from that point of view, a 16, please.
16. Attach.
Yeah, beautiful detail, very much like the one we saw of the wren. And, you know, lovely the way you've caught the bird actually, you know, doing what they do, running up and down these trees. You've got that feeling there. So there's that connection with what we know about these particular birds. And just that extra little bit in the beak, you know, it's just got the bit of wheat or corn or seed or whatever it is, nut, in the beak, I think is kind of the icing on the cake. And there's some lovely quality of light and detail in the tree trunk as well. So I'd like to hold that one back, please.
Hold that one. Pale blue-tailed damselfly.
Another very strong, competent natural history picture. And unlike the one we saw of the butterfly right at the beginning, here I kind of feel the size and the space around the insect is appropriate. I think it works so much more strongly. And I like that sort of greenish sort of circular effect that you've got around it in the background there. And then you've got that sort of lighter section that's behind the body. So again, a very competent piece of work. And that one's an 18, please.
18. Sunthwaite Lake.
Yeah, a little bit similar in some ways to the one we saw of the dawn earlier on. Here we've got the sun sort of just coming up behind that mountain, or maybe going back down, and it's just illuminating enough of the lake in the foreground to sort of see some of that lovely sort of luminance on the water there. And my comments are going to be a little bit similar to the one we saw of the sunrise, because again, I'm sort of trying to look for a clean composition. And I think the area of the water and the trees in the middle of the water there, I think it is fairly clean. But I feel that foreground is perhaps just a little bit messy, perhaps just not quite as tidy to sort of really help the eye through the picture. I think I'm sort of fighting my way across those trees to get to that central patch of light. But nevertheless, I think it's a nice moment that you've caught there. 15, please.
15. Survivors.
Yeah, certainly a lot going on in this picture. And, you know, it's kind of reminiscent of where we are now at the moment in some ways, that, you know, these are the people that are left behind after the apocalypse. And, you know, the guy sort of looks as if he's been injured there, and the wheels have fallen off the wagon. And, you know, the girl on the left-hand side, she looks sort of okay. And the background, again, you can see sort of things are rusting and decaying and falling down. So there is that feeling, as I say, of the apocalypse. And these are sort of the survivors. But what's important for me in this picture is that one of the survivors is pregnant. So there is the feeling of new life being reborn out of this amazing sort of background and this apocalyptic scene. And on that level, I think it works very well indeed. 17.
17. Arrivals.
Yeah, it's a simple picture, and it's probably an area where none of us would have the nerve to get our cameras out, because I know I'd be sort of worried about all the closed circuit television going on around me, and they'd be thinking, oh, you're not allowed to photograph in somewhere like this. So hats off to you for having the bottle to actually get the camera out and take the picture. And perhaps you had to do it very, very fast as well, because if you didn't get this moment, then that lady who's walking across in the background there would have gone. And if you did take your time to sort of not set it up, but wait for that decisive moment when somebody came through, then again, you know, brilliantly done. And I like the fact that you've got the exit right on the right hand side as well. So there's lots of elements which I think are very, very cleverly composed in this picture. And for me, it's a simple one, but it's very, very effective. 18, please.
18. E-workers.
Yeah, very appropriate with the time at the moment, isn't it? And I like these sort of little miniature figures getting up here and getting out all over the keys. So I think there's an element of humour coming through in this particular picture. I think it's, for me, it's very much a work in progress. I think maybe it was an idea that you had, you set it up, but I just wonder whether you could have sort of made the point that little bit more strongly, perhaps by, you know, having a sponge or something in the hand of the worker. I mean, I'm asking a lot here, and as judges, you know, we're terrible people for asking the impossible, but it's just these little extra bits that just elevate it beyond, you know, the good images, which all of these are, to the absolutely supreme award-winning images. So I feel, you know, if there was a little bit more feeling of them actually working, I think it would have a stronger impact. But nevertheless, I do love the idea. 16, please.
Or a hawk sitting on the fence.
Yes, sitting on the fence. When's he going to come off the fence? Well, probably when dinner comes along in front of him. And he can swoop down, because just look at the talons and the claws, and just look at the eye. I mean, he really does mean business. Perhaps maybe there's a little bit of wind or something like that about, and it's just sort of fluffing out the feathers as well. But, you know, that kind of fluffing out the feathers again sort of gives him the impression that he's strong and he's bold. Beyond that, there's nothing else happening in the picture. It's very much, you see it, you appreciate the detail. And I think some of the other natural history pictures have got that, just that little bit more going for them. But nevertheless, it's a very good piece of photography. 16, please.
Very tired busker.
Yeah, I really was attracted to this picture, and I think you've caught that moment very, very well indeed. You've got down to the level of the busker, so I kind of feel that I'm in his world, and he's got that bag of, maybe it had some food or something like that in it. Perhaps he's finished eating it, perhaps there's still half a roll or something like that in there. And he's just, you know, out for the count. He's just sat there all day, and he's, you know, really tired. No one else is walking past. You sort of worry and think about what time of the day this is. So I think it's a superb piece of photography, but I feel what lets it down is the processing. It's fairly even tone across the picture. I could use the word flat as well, but maybe, you know, flat is somber. Perhaps that's what you were trying to emphasize. But I think that evenness of the lighting, I don't think does the picture any favors. I would like to have seen perhaps a little bit more contrast in the shot to really bring that message home. So I was torn with this one between it being really speaking to me strongly, but technically perhaps not quite as strong as some of the others. 15 for that, please.
15. Humpback.
Yeah, lovely captured moment. You know, how fortuitous and how amazing it must have been to have been there, and to not only have seen the whale, but to also have captured it as it's coming up through the water. And in the background as well, you've got the sort of what looks to be ice, and a very, very cold sort of landscape. So it's got that connection with the sea. It's got that there. It's not just a whale in the middle of the ocean. You've got a strong feeling of land behind it as well. And I'm also enjoying all the sort of barnacles and everything that's on the whale. And it's a picture I think that you could sort of look at for a long time and look at some of the shapes and design. And again, you could say the lighting is very even, but in this case, I think it's got some vibrance. And I think on that level, it works very well indeed. 17, please.
17. Alex.
Yeah, love that far away look in Alex's eye. You know, you'd love to know what he's thinking about. You know, is he thinking back to another time? Is he puzzling? The brow is slightly furrowed, you know, and you're kind of thinking that he's pondering something. He's wondering about something. Should he move in on something? Should he say something? Should he hang back? What's he going to say when he actually gets to wherever it is that he's going? And I think it's an image and an expression that asks lots of questions. And I think we can all just assume, you know, we've all got our own mind as to what it is that he's thinking about and what it is that he's doing. And a lovely, lovely light on the subject as well. And a beautiful, beautiful dark background and a fantastic amount of space off to the left-hand side. I think that works very, very strongly indeed. I'd like to see that one again, please.
Okay, hold that one. On deliberations.
Yeah, quite an unusual shot of the swan, and I'm really kind of enjoying and I'm excited by the fact that I'm down at the swan's level. You know, normally we tower above these birds, but here I'm part of its world, and you know, maybe I'm a little swan or something like that, or a little duck swimming around in this area, and that's what I see. And my goodness me, he's large, he's big. And I think there's some beautiful, beautiful lighting across the scene as well. And just those sort of few little drips of water coming off from the beak, I think is an extra bonus. And plus, also, you've got these wonderful ripples. It looks as if it's a sort of cool, misty morning and incredibly tranquil and so calm. And just where the swan has swum through, it's just sort of created these beautiful ripples. So for me, it's a very refreshingly different picture of a swan or a duck or something like that on a lake. 18, please.
18. Mishka.
Yeah, really, really large in the frame, but I like it. I think it's bold. And I absolutely adore that little bit of hair just coming across the eye. It's not right through the middle of the eye so that it's completely obliterated, but it's just that sort of tantalizing piece of hair. And you can just imagine, you know, she's an incredibly attractive woman and incredibly alluring as well and compelling to look at. And you can just imagine the boyfriend or the husband or whoever it is, you can just see that hand going in there and just moving that little bit of hair and getting near her face. I think it's a gorgeous, gorgeous portrait. And that one again is another 18, please.
18. Lighthouse at sunset.
Yeah. Going down the slipway here towards the lighthouse. Presumably it's a long exposure. You've just got that kind of mistiness across the water there, and also sort of a nice gentle mistiness in the or movement, I should say, in the clouds as well, and some beautiful colours. And I think that creates an interesting feeling. It doesn't necessarily go beyond that, but I think it's a competent piece of photography, and that one for me is a 16, please.
16. Young eagle owl.
Yeah, beautiful portrait of the owl, and those colours, the sort of really again harmony coming through in the picture. You know, the eyes and the feathers and the background there. There's this sort of lovely greeny brown tones across the whole of the shot. Perhaps I might have liked to have seen maybe just a little bit darker on the sky above the owl. It's quite a sort of largest bright part. It was sitting there, and presumably that's a mountain or something in the background, and that's just the sort of skyline coming up. Perhaps that jars just fractionally, but it is a very you know, very minor point. But there are some really, really super pictures in this competition this evening. So for me, that one is a 16.
16. Milky Way.
I think astrophotography is becoming more and more popular. You're seeing it in competitions quite a lot. And for me, what's important, or as important, is what's in the foreground. Because an astrophotography, it's a sky, isn't it? It's, in my view, it's no different to a landscape. Instead of having clouds up in the sky, you've got these wonderful stars and these effects that you've managed to capture very well. But, you know, as with any landscape shot, you know, it's the foreground that often makes the interest, and is that set off well. And I think it's balanced quite well in this particular picture. You've got this sort of strong tower with some nice lighting on it. And it also sort of complements the shape of the Milky Way as it stretches across the sky. And that one for me is, ooh, that one's a 16, please.
16. The bass player.
Yeah, you can just see this as a record cover shot. You know, or a CD player. We don't have them anymore now, do we? CDs and records and things. Maybe it could be a poster for her band or whatever it is that she's in. And you've also left a nice lot of white space in the sort of top right hand side for the name of her band or where she's going to be performing at. So I think it's got a very, very strong commercial feel to it. Beautifully photographed, incredibly clean composition. And very, very brave of you to put that white background in when her instrument is predominantly white. But I think you've handled that very well. And I think it's got a very strong commercial feel to it. 17, please.
17. Bird's nest soup for lunch.
Yeah, I think it's fascinating to wander around these kind of places, whether you were supposed to be there or whether you got in sort of semi-legally, as it were, or perhaps it was completely illegal, I don't know. But it's fantastic to just let your eye wander around this image and just look at the detail and everything that's still there. And you could sort of say, well, it's quite difficult to sort of know where to settle because there's so much going on. But for me, what really makes this shot is the fact that you've got the clock on the top of that mantelpiece. It looks to be, what, 10:05? And, you know, what happened at 10:05? Was that when they walked out? Did the clock carry on ticking for another hour? I don't know. But there's that feeling that perhaps at one point time was important. It's not anymore. This is timeless, and it's just sort of disintegrating before our eyes. But for me, as I say, the clock really makes it. 17, please.
17. Joker's tear.
Yeah, a really thoughtful piece of photography. And it's kind of so sad, isn't it, when you look into the eyes here. There's no smile as well. You can sort of see that kind of, you know, upturned lips, as it were, and that frown, and that kind of sorrowful look, and that far away look. You know, he's in another world. He's thinking about something else. You know, nothing that's going on around him is particularly important, because whatever it is that he's thinking about has moved him to tears here. So I think it's a very emotive piece of photography, and one that's been done incredibly well. And I love that space, you know, that he's looking into. The other bit for me that sort of really works well is the fact that that background is the same color as his eyes, and that, I think, is all those kind of little details I think help to elevate an image. This one for me is an 18, please.
18. Framed for the crime.
I looked at this one for quite a long time, and I looked at the title as well, and I thought, well, framed, yes, I understand that. You've got a lovely shapes of the leaves here, and you've got sort of what looks to be a little kind of jetty or something like that over on the left hand side, and it feels like springtime. You know, the reeds are just starting to come up into full leaf. And it frames that sun so beautifully. But what really sort of unnerved me a little bit was the word, it was framed for the crime. Now, please forgive me if I've missed the point of your picture, but I'm trying to work out what the crime is. And I looked hard at the scene. Maybe it's somewhere that's very, very familiar to you guys, and it's something that I don't recognize because I'm not living where you are. So for me, there was a little bit of mismatch. It hasn't affected the mark I'm going to give it. I was just intrigued by the title. And I sort of struggled a little bit to get the meaning out of this picture. I think it's pleasant, and I think on that level it works, but perhaps for me not quite as strong as some of the others this evening. 15, please.
15. It's been a hard day.
Oh, yes, yes, indeed. And, beautifully framed. I feel that there's sort of a vignette or something that's been put around this picture. And I think that helps because it takes our attention to the guy in the middle there who's just, in this tatty old van. I don't even know whether it'll work. It probably will fire into life. But he's had enough. You look at the jeans and look at the dirt and everything on them, and it's probably incredibly hot as well, and so, maybe hard physical manual labor, and he's just ever so wearisome. So I think from that one, the message comes through loud and clear. A 16 for that, please.
16.
We're up to number 40. Do you want to take a break now, or do you want me to carry on for another 5 minutes?
Yeah, carry on
Another
for
5
another
minutes.
5. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, no problem.
Portrait of an old man.
Beautifully sympathetic portrait. I love the kind of feeling that comes through on this. He feels so kind and so generous, and a lot of wisdom to share with his audience. And he's the kind of person that I feel, you could ask him anything, and he would be honest, and he would tell you sort of in the nicest possible way of whatever it is that you were struggling with, you wanted to know. So I think it's a lovely, lovely shot. And again, although everything is sort of predominantly brown across the image, the face and the hair and the beard stands out really, really well indeed. A 17 for that one, please.
15. From bud to flower.
Yeah, lovely idea of having this sort of, it's not a triptych, it's a quad, whatever you would call it, a quad, I can't say the word, but it would be a triptych with the word quad in front of it, a quad, whatever. You know what I'm trying to get at. I think, as I say, the idea is lovely, seeing it going from bud to flower. And I think you've sort of, chosen your background the same. I presume perhaps you picked 4 different flowers because waiting for one bud to flower and get to each of those stages and have such a uniform background, I think would be sort of almost impossible to do. So I think, having sort of visualized this, I think it works. And also I think the harmony of picking up the color of the flower and using that as the frame, I think is very skillfully done. 16, please.
16. Snow Peaks, Lakeland Fells.
Yeah, now for you, I guess you probably see these shots all the time. For me, it's quite different to see this. And I can really strongly kind of feel being there because you can see the wind is blowing the snow off the top of those peaks. So immediately the mind goes to the fact that, a strong wind is often a cold wind. It's this feels like factor. It may well have been, I don't know, -1, -2, but with that strong, maybe 30-mile-an-hour wind or something, perhaps it feels more like -10. So there's that cold, bleak feeling coming through in the shot. And as I say, it is just the wind picking up that snow that for me really gives it the power. And it really tells me just how cold and somber it is. but at the same time, a little bit of patch of light right in the sort of center at the base of one of those mountains there just gives me a hope that perhaps the sun will break through. So I thought this was a very, very strong sort of mountain shot. 18 for this one, please.
18. Dragon Child.
Yeah, there's a kind of innocence versus evil in this shot. The kind of menace of the dragon coming through and that look in its eye. And you can imagine that, you know, the fire is going to come out of those nostrils at any moment. And look at those teeth, you know, there's that really sort of strong, ferocious monster coming down. And then you've got this beautiful little innocent child, you know, with the lovely dress and that the beautiful blonde hair and the sort of gold behind her. But she's got fire in her hand, you know, so she's maybe taunting the dragon. And, you know, there's this kind of contrast, isn't there? He's not breathing fire, but she's got the fire there. And yet you've got the innocence versus the evil. So I think there's quite an interesting picture and story coming through here. Perhaps for my taste, the dragon itself feels just a little over big. I know that's probably what you wanted it to feel like, but it's just maybe a tad too dominant compared to the size of her. But as I say, I think it's a super idea and I think it's been done very well. 16, please.
16. Amelia. Have a break after this one?
Okay, yeah. Yeah, lovely, gentle feel to the shot. And I love this high key effect. I think that works so well. If the last picture was, you know, the girl was innocent, then here, there's that kind of feeling of innocence and that feeling of vulnerability by the sort of high key effect and this kind of partial covering of her face. And yet when you look into her eyes, she actually looks very, very confident. And she actually feels as if, you know, she's happy in her own skin and her own mind. And on that level, I think it works very well indeed. It could have been quite easy to sort of get burnout on that white scarf that she's got. But I think the detail has been handled perfectly. Just also as well, you can just see the bottom of the lip. You know, if that scarf had gone up just that little bit higher, it would have covered her mouth. But no, it's just there. And also when you look at the eye as well, again, you can just about see the edge of the eyelashes. So there's some real attention to detail gone into this portrait. And that sort of white against white, I think, has come off superbly. It's one I'll see again, please.
Hold that. So, are we ready for a comfort break?
Okay,
Yes.
yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. So we'll come back. Can everybody hear? Let me just about 22. So 10-minute break, everybody, please. Okay, Michael, if you can bring up the next
I could.
picture,
Yeah,
next
I
image.
certainly could. I might even do it.
Yes.
Yeah. So here we go.
Could you make sure that everybody else is on mute, please?
Yeah, I shall go through and just mute the ones who aren't. Everybody. Pardon thee and me.
Right. Okay, are we ready? Good to go?
It might be.
Yes.
Super.
Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, so, you know, wonderful shot to be down at the sea, you know, lovely amount of light coming through. Sorry, the reason I stopped then is because something suddenly happened to my computer and it changed in front of me. The view suddenly changed and I wasn't quite sure what I was looking at.
It does that.
That's all right. So yeah, as I say, a beautiful, lovely sunny day down at the coast and the water there, you can just sort of feel the waves, quite big waves as well. So a little bit of splash, not too ferocious, but nevertheless, I don't want to get too near the edge there in case my camera, of all things, gets soaked. So yeah, I think that feeling comes across quite strongly. But what else is there in the picture to sort of really elevate it above the rest of the images? And for me, I think this one sort of is just missing something. It is a lovely day. The lighthouse does stand sort of quite boldly on that horizon there. But that's beyond that. I'm struggling a little bit with finding mood in the shot. And for me, this one doesn't work quite as well as some of the others, unfortunately. This one is a 12, please.
Oh, charm of goldfinch.
Yeah, lovely little collection of goldfinches here and doing what they should be doing, eating the seeds out of those teasels. And a lovely sort of soft feel and a lovely sort of colour palette across the whole of the image. And I think it's quite elegant as well, especially that one on the left-hand side that's got this beautiful, beautiful curve in it. So I think from a design point of view, I think this image is very, very strong indeed. I wasn't quite so sure about the sort of technical aspects of it. I'm looking, maybe these birds, the wind is sort of perhaps moving them around a little bit because they didn't feel quite as sharp as I would like them to have felt. Especially when I look at that teasel over on the right-hand side, that appears to be beautifully sharp and beautifully in focus. And I would like to have seen that quality across the rest of the picture. But as I say, the design for me works very well. 14, please.
14. Learning to hunt.
Yeah, a great story going on in this particular picture. And you can see that poor, I guess it's a pigeon or something like that, right in the middle of the shot. And you can see sort of all the blood and everything coming out of it, where it's obviously been hacked to death by the falcons that are surrounding it. And they do look menacing, don't they? Especially that one down at the bottom there. Whether they are all going to go and fight with each other over this pigeon, I don't know. But certainly there's a lot of sort of motion and movement going on in this particular shot. A 17 for that, please.
17. Fairy tale cottage.
What I like about this picture is that light centered on the cottage itself, because you know the light is part of the picture is often where the eye goes to, and I'm going straight to that cottage, and it looks a little bit sort of dilapidated, and it's got an air of mystery to it. And it's got all this sort of moss and leaves and things on the chimney as well. And there's lots of greenery all around it. So it has got that kind of magic feel to it, that sort of fairy tale effect is coming through. And it kind of sets the scene for me of something like Little Red Riding Hood. And I think that is a sort of delightful little view. And I also like the fact that you framed one of those windows around the pergola that was in the garden. You know, had you have moved slightly left or right, it might have overlapped those windows. So I think it's been very, very carefully composed. And I think the lighting's been handled very well indeed. 17, please.
17. Black-backed jackal pup.
Yeah, a bit like the ones we saw previously of the birds. Here, the pup looks as if it's got something in its mouth. Perhaps it's, you know, it's a smaller animal, it's been successful, or perhaps it's managed to steal it away from something else. But I love that kind of young feeling to this shot. It's beautiful, isn't it? It hasn't been in any fights yet. So the fur is still wonderfully soft and beautifully attractive. And I just love the light in those eyes as well, that kind of blue cyany feel reflecting back from presumably the sky behind. And a lovely narrow depth of field as well, takes me straight towards the eyes, and then the sort of focus just drops off a little bit as you move down the back of the pup. 18 for that, please.
18. Fish supper.
Well, yes, we all know that cats love fish, and these two are no exception. and they've set off in their boat across the ocean, and their suitcases piled high. They're obviously from Britain because they're flying the Union Jack, and they're off on their trip. And you know, one of them is fast asleep. It's already got its meal for the day. It's hanging on to that. Notice the paws are firmly over the fish, and it's just settling into that little cushion there while its mate goes off and catches other little fish. And I like the fact that you can also see not just above the water, but also underneath it as well. And you sort of got the bottom of the ocean there and various other little fish swimming through. And just as an extra little attention to detail, you've just got the little bubbles coming out from the fish as well underneath the water there. So that adds some extra impact to the picture. And lovely sort of sky. It looks as if the sort of, you know, the light is just breaking through, a little bit stormy. So I hope these two are going to be okay. But I think all the elements of the picture come together very well. And I think there's a lot of thought has gone into this. And from that point of view, I'd like to see this one again, please.
Okay, hold that one. Boathouse.
Yeah, one of the few pictures in monochrome. There's not that many monochrome pictures this evening. And, you know, it's all about shape, isn't it? I'm assuming that the sky was, you know, perhaps the lighting was very, very dull and bland. And as such, you know, monochrome is always good in sort of dull conditions, because then you can concentrate on the shapes and the textures, and you don't have to worry quite so much about the sort of plain sky at the top there. And there's a lot of sort of debris, ropes and all sorts of things going on here. So from that point of view, I think some of the texture on the rope comes out very well. I think there is a tendency perhaps for a little bit of burnout on some of those ropes. They're going just a little bit bright. And overall, I find the composition perhaps just a little bit muddled. You know, I think these pictures are there in front of you, and I think it's quite hard. I think you have to work the subject a lot to sort of get a composition that kind of goes across each aspect of it, leads you into the shot and leads you around. So for me, the composition here, as I say, is just a little bit muddled on that one. 12 for that, please.
12. Rotterdam Central Station.
Yeah, wonderful geometric shapes and some sort of super graphical design in the shot. And I really appreciate that sort of dark background. And then you've got this wonderful amount of light on the central station itself, just sort of coming up and really making that picture dominant. And then when you've explored the architecture there, then you can just allow the eye to go down and look at a few people that are walking across the concourse. And it's not too busy, it's not too crowded. So again, I think that makes a sort of pleasant composition and a fairly clean composition. So I think it's a sort of pristine piece of photography, and one that works very well. 16, please.
16. Not amused.
Yeah, he really does not like being tickled by that blade of grass. And you can almost see the kind of expression on those ladies' faces. They're kind of teasing him, aren't they, and taunting him just a little bit. And he's not going to be moved in any way. He's just not going to look at them and sort of yield to their demands. He's going to look fairly straight ahead of him and not be pulled into it. So I like that interaction. I think that comes across. There's kind of a human element to it, and you can almost feel that, can't you? It's sort of set, obviously, years and years ago, and there's that kind of feeling of a reenactment there. But you can kind of just bring it back into the modern day, and you can imagine that scenario very well indeed. 17, please.
17. Novice monks with attitude.
They are very confident, aren't they? You know, they're not sort of, their body language is not sort of closing in on itself. You know, their legs are kind of open, they're dominant, they're there, and you know, they're just learning the ropes, as it were. They're not smiling, are they? They've got a haughty expression on their face, and maybe the one in the background actually perhaps looks a little bit bored as well. So I'm not entirely certain that they're happy with you taking the picture, but I think the shape of their umbrellas works well, and I like the fact there's a little bit of space between those two umbrellas. If they'd overlapped a little bit, it would have made the composition just that little bit more cluttered. I do feel that the background between or behind those arches, it's just a little bit bright, and I wonder whether that could have been toned down fractionally. And it's also another one that feels a little bit skewed to the left-hand side. I might have been tempted just to sort of get the skew or the distort and just bring that top right-hand side out just a fraction, just to make that sort of edge of the archway there just parallel with the edge of the shot. 15 for that, please.
15. Enigmatic stare.
Yeah, we talk about pictures that sort of are eyes that follow you around the room, and this one does that in abundance. You know, wherever I sit and wherever I move, I feel I'm going to be pinned to the wall by these eyes. And it's very, very haunting in some ways. And I love the kind of almost the eyes themselves have got a glassy feel to them. And that stare is just tremendous. And the light on those eyes, that's, you know, that's where the light is centered right around those eyes. And you just can't get away from it. I love that negative space on the left-hand side. I think that's absolutely superb. And it's one that I'm going to see again, please.
Hold that one. Sunset on incoming tide.
Yeah, interesting sort of movement in the water. And I'm sort of looking across those, or it appears to be kind of zigzags of those groins. And I'm following them down across the water there, and I'm meeting that lovely sort of patch of golden light. And, you know, then it's sort of reflected back up in the sky as well. So there's a lovely sort of light and colour. I mean, you know, whenever you get blues and yellows or blues and golds in a picture, it's, you know, it's always strong compositionally. Those two colours work incredibly well. So from that point of view, I think the colour makes this one work. In terms of the composition, although there is flow across it, for me, it's perhaps not quite as interesting and as compelling and long lasting as some of the other images this evening. 15, please.
15. Party time.
Yeah, very, very strong, confident pose. I love the purple reflected in the dress, the lips, the feathers, the eye makeup, everything. Really, really dominant. Interesting lighting on the face itself. It's not too bright, it's fairly even, but I think that works. And just a little bit of lighting on the dark feathers behind as well, just bring out the detail of that. So an incredibly strong, confident person, happy to be photographed, happy with whoever they are. And on that level, I think it works. A 16, please.
16. Matt Rogers.
Well, I'm not sure whether I wish I could do something like that or not. It looks rather too athletic for me, and a little bit sort of perilous when they come to land. You just hope there's no rocks or anything else like that underneath him. But, you know, fantastic action, caught very, very well indeed. And from that point of view, you know, the moment is there. What I feel in this picture is that the water itself, you know, you kind of think there should be lots of sparkle behind it and lots of wonderful luminance. And yet it looks actually quite muddy in terms of its tones. So technically, I think this one has been let down somewhat compared to a lot of the other technically brilliant images this evening. So from that point of view, it gives me a dilemma as to where I go with the mark. And the mark I give it, I'm afraid I have had to sort of take a mark or so off because I feel that sort of water hasn't got the quality that I would be looking for. A 14 for that, please.
14. Arthur Pendragon.
Well, dare I say I could look at this all evening. Probably shouldn't. We should probably move on. But yeah, lovely feeling in the picture. You know, really beautiful the way this has come together. I like the feathers and the sword and everything like that. And you can see this as a poster, you know, a pin-up poster on the wall. And I'm sure lots of young ladies would flock to buy this particular picture. It has got connection with me as the viewer, but there are some really, really strong portraits this evening. So perhaps for me, that connection and the lighting isn't quite as strong as some of the other ones that I've held back. A 16 for this, please.
16. On the Hunt.
Yeah, lovely sort of diagonal line going from bottom left up to sort of top right through the eyes and the face of this particular bird. So, you know, I think, you know, from compositionally, I think it's been caught well. I think you've handled the background well at the same time, because it is taken nicely sort of out of focus, and there's a sort of similar colouring and toning through it. It's sort of quite harmonious with the bird itself. But overall, I just wondered whether there was a touch of magenta in the picture. And in another way as well, I feel the lighting is a little bit even and a little bit flat across the bird. So from that point of view, again, I've probably just taken off a mark or so for the technical aspects of this picture. 16, please.
16. Morning Dew.
Yeah, this one has got that sort of lovely contrast and that sort of lovely vibrance. And you can just feel the freshness of this. You know, it's sort of springtime, the flowers are starting to bloom and there's more to come out. But there's still, the mornings are still quite chilly and still a lot of sort of dew and mist and everything in the air. And you've just got this lovely sort of jewels picking up on parts of the web. I have to say that I think perhaps the image might have been stronger if you'd been able to get more of the jewels on the spider's web. So for me, perhaps, you know, compositionally it's sound, but I think that moment perhaps could have been better. 14, please.
14. Dear Chantry.
Yeah, caught in action. Absolutely kind of decisive moment just as she's going over the bar, and you can see that sort of look of concentration on the face, and it's kind of almost a pained expression as she's making sure she puts her body in exactly the right place and shape to get over that bar. And I think she might just about get over it. I'm not entirely certain. Looks as if perhaps her bottom might be about to just touch it. I'm not sure. One aspect of this particular picture that I looked at quite a lot for a long time was actually the lighting on her skin, and on her knee, and also sort of on her tummy and part of her arms as well, and maybe a little bit on the face. It looks perhaps as if it might have caught the light. Her skin might have been quite shiny and perhaps it caught the light and you were sort of trying to tone it down. It looks sort of quite dull and matte compared to sort of the skin, especially on her left leg. That sort of looks far more natural, whereas the one on her right looks a little bit artificial. So technically, I thought this picture wasn't as strong as some of the others. 13, please.
13. Finches.
Yeah, the male and the female, perhaps, you know, doing some kind of a dance, or there's a kind of ritual or something. And they look as if they're connected, you know, that eye level with each other. They're sort of coming in together there. And I like the different shape on this. You know, the one of the bird sitting on the stick versus the one with the wings sort of down. And I kind of enjoy that little bit of space in the middle. It just adds that little bit of tension to the picture. You wonder where it's going to settle and whether they're both going for the same post. And on that level, I think the picture works. 17, please.
17. Discordant shapes.
Yeah, I think this is the kind of picture where actually the further back you sit from it, the more the picture comes to you. You know, the closer you get, there's more sort of interruption of the lines on the back poster or whatever it is versus the bikes. And you kind of thinking, is that a fence or something? Is that a poster? So I can quite see how the sort of title comes together. I would perhaps like to have seen just on the left hand side, there's a lady sort of just going out of the shot. I might have liked to have seen just a little bit more of her. I don't have a problem with that she's on the edge of the picture, but I just want to see a little bit more, a sort of completeness of her, especially as there's that little bit of space on the right hand side. Or I might have cropped the right really tight as well, so that it sort of really fills the frame. But yeah, I think it's a picture that's got intrigue and mystery, and I think it works. 16, please.
16. Afterburner.
Yeah, strong sense of movement in this shot. You can just see the condensation or the heat haze, whatever it is, coming out of the back of those aircraft. And presumably these are going at an incredible speed. You know, you don't get very long to get these shots. I'm presumably, you know, you're firing off lots and lots, and then there's just always one, you know, if we're doing a sequence of pictures, there's always that one that's just got that extra in terms of its composition and in terms of its placement. And I'm presuming, you know, you've chosen the right one. Overall, I feel the contrast is just a little bit flat. And I would just like to have seen it just boosted a little bit. So I think that does let this picture down somewhat. 13, please.
13. Fountain.
Yeah. Interesting fountain, isn't it? It's the horse is sort of snorting out the water, and you kind of hope that it is snorting out water and nothing else. So that's an interesting bit of architecture, the way that that has been designed. I really like the area of the hooves and the feet. You know, I think the light and the tones on that against that lovely spray of water in the background, for me, is actually the strongest part of the picture. That's where there's some wonderful, wonderful contrast. I think on the left-hand side of the shot, and over the horse's face itself, I think the contrast is sort of just a little bit flat. And on that level, I don't think it works as well as some of the others this evening. 13, please.
13. Ornate horny frog.
Yeah, wonderful texture. You know, you can just feel it's wet, can't you? There's this lovely shine and sheen over the whole of the body there. And it's just sort of got this reflection in the water, and it's just a little ripple, isn't it, in that reflection? I think that makes all the difference. It just adds that sort of stronger feeling of more natural feel to it. It just feels less sort of set up, because you've got this sort of feeling of the ripple on the water there. So I think from that point of view, it works. For me, again, it's one of those, a bit like the butterfly we saw in the first half, where it's huge in the picture, and I'm just crying out for some space. I think a lot of judges sort of tend to want to crop everything, and people sort of perhaps sometimes start cropping down things just that little bit too tight. And I just want some space to be able to breathe. 15 for that, please.
15. The doll maker.
I don't know whether this is the same little girl that we saw with the dragon, but it's certainly got the sort of similar hairstyle and similar build, and the pose with the pointing finger there. And she's sort of pointing up at this gentleman here, and she's sort of saying, you know, what are you doing? Why are you making me as a double? Why are you making me as a doll? I'm not a doll, I'm real. So I think there's a nice little story coming through in this particular picture. And I'm really intrigued by the pinkness and the redness on the fingers of the chap who's doing the painting as well. Again, it's these little things, the attention to detail, that makes all the difference. Because you can imagine that, you know, he's got fairly big hands and this little doll is small. He's got those tins of red and orange and pink paint. And you can just imagine that as he's trying to be careful and paint the doll, some of the paint is going on his fingers. So a lovely bit of attention to detail. 17, please.
17. Silver birch in winter.
Yeah, wonderful place for a walk. Nobody's there, you know, we've got this all to ourselves, so we can just soak up the quietness of the morning, and just sort of watch this mist as it starts to develop, and then maybe the sun will break through and we'll get some magical mysterious shapes. You know, it's a brilliant morning for photography, the sort of thing that we all absolutely dream and hope that it's going to happen. So I'm really enjoying sort of walking along this diagonal line. And I think it's always challenging because with subjects like this, you can't move these trees. They're there. You have to work with them. And for me, there's just a slight part of the picture which just jars somewhat, and that's the tree on the left-hand side. And if you look at this, it's like kind of got a V-shaped branch. And where that right-hand branch is coming up, there's another tree sort of juxtaposition behind it. And it's almost as if, you know, that branch is being held up by some kind of post. And I just wonder whether it was possible just to sort of clone that out a little bit and take that away. So it just gives this lovely free flowing composition through the shot. So for me, compositionally, you know, I think I might have been trying to sort of move around and get something just a little bit different, but still create that wonderful mysterious sort of misty effect. 15, please.
You must be mad.
Well, I wouldn't argue with that as a title. I'm not going to walk along there. It's way too dangerous. But, you know, this guy, hopefully he was okay. But, you know, what a terrific storm. You know, these kind of shots, it's magical to go out with a camera as long as you're standing in a safe position. And you can see all the force of that water as it sort of sweeps up over the lighthouse and then over that sort of harbour area or promontory. And then you can see where the water is sort of just rushing off of that surface and back into the sea. And there's a kind of boiling mass of water in the base there. So really strong, powerful shot. But rather like the one we saw of the busker earlier on in the competition, you know, it's got drama, it's got power. You feel there's a storm going on. And yet the tonal range is actually very flat and very even. And I just think, you know, everything is there in the shot. And I just think in the post-processing, I think just some more could be done just to bring out that real strong strength of power and feeling. Because it's just not coming across for me. And I think that's a little bit of a shame. 14, please.
15. Holywell.
Yeah, magical place to be. In this sort of cave, hiding away and just looking out beyond, using the cave as a natural frame for the scene behind, and these sort of two little bits of rock just in the sort of off the shore there. So I think that's well done. And I think, you know, it's always important to sort of work around the scene and try and use things to make the shot that much more interesting. And I think it adds that level of mystery and intrigue. I think perhaps in terms of the processing, I can just see a little bit of ghosting around the edge of where the cave is and the sky there. And I think that sort of just breaks up the scene a little bit. And overall, again, I don't think the quality is here, especially again when you look around the rocks out to sea and some of the area of the sky. And I think that's unfortunate because it does bring this one down somewhat. 12, please.
12. Visiting the Natural History Museum.
Wonderful building. And I love this kind of soft feel that you've got to the picture. And you've used a sort of slow shutter speed here, and you've got, maybe it's a double exposure, because you've got sort of the same people appearing in different parts of the image there. And it doesn't feel particularly frenzied, although you've got movement. And you know, there's not too many people in the shot, so it actually feels quite calm. And I think that calmness goes in harmony with the softness that you've created. You know, I think if you'd created it soft, but you've got lots of people, it wouldn't have worked. So I think there's just a right amount of people compared to the softness in the scene. 17 for that, please.
17. Old Spice.
Yeah, absolutely. Great advertising shot, isn't it? And it feels clean, doesn't it? It's fresh and invigorating. And there's some lovely light coming through the waves there, and some beautiful colors too. And you've just got this guy framed against that wave behind, and you've got all this sort of lovely bokeh in the foreground as well. So I think that sort of really says it all. In terms of the quality, perhaps it's not quite as sharp as I might like it. Perhaps it just hasn't got that crisp feeling to it, and the quality that unfortunately is coming through in a lot of the other pictures. So I have just taken a mark off just for that. 14, please.
14. Rainbow Droplet.
Yeah. Beautifully done, nicely composed, real good attention to detail, because you've got that, you know, the rainbow in the background, and then you've got the sort of the reflection in this little droplet there. And it's interesting when you put these pictures together, you know, what color are you going to choose? You've got all of the colors of the rainbow and you've chosen blue. I don't know whether that's significant or not. It's my favorite color, so it works for me. And it's cool, isn't it? It calms the picture down. It creates sort of tranquil feel to it. You know, if that had been the red color, you'd have got a completely different feeling. It's not going to alter the mark I give it. It just alters the feeling of the picture. But I think it's been very, very skillfully done indeed. And 18 for that, please.
18. These, oh, I've got one that's not marked for some reason. Something went slightly awry there, and I don't know which one it was.
Yeah, we should have 9 held back.
Right, well, in that case, missed the whole bit. Give me a moment while I just sure I've got the right ones. One.
Ah, yes, that was a holdback.
It was, yep. Right, that's nice and easy. So we go to, right, try that one. There we are.
Okay. Do you want me to read out the scores, or do you want me to do them in order? What's the best for you?
Up to you, whatever you want to do. Do you want to go through them, or do you want to pick them out of here?
Let's pick them out of here so we can build up the tension for the ones that are going to get the 20s, shall we? Yep. So for me, let's go back to the start. The first one, the female hoverfly, that one is a 19.
Right, so that's a 19. And let's just have a quick look at it. Yeah. And we'll even say who these are. So that is Andrea's from Oldham. Done. Hit the button again. Oh.
And the next one along, the wren, that's another 19.
Okay, 19. And the wren is by Jeremy from the Isle of Man.
Princess, number 10, that's another 19.
And that is by Brianna herself. It's a self-portrait.
Then we'll go up to, we will now chop and change a little bit, otherwise we'll start the obvious where I'm heading. So let's go for number 56, which is also a 19.
Yep, 19. And that one is mine from Oldham. Also Brianna. Very good model.
Mm-hmm. We will now go to number 51, the fish supper. That's another 19.
That one is Christine's from Oldham.
Number 30, Alex. That's another 19.
And that one is Malk's, a self-portrait from Oldham.
And that leaves these final three, which to me are completely different from each other, totally different styles. I think, you know, in terms of natural history, I just love the diagonal line that you've got on that nuthatch with the seed in the beak. I think that's, you know, the others are very, very good, but this one has just got that extra edge for it for me. The lovely, lovely high key picture of Samelia, and completely different on the left-hand side here. The gentleman with the crow. And again, for me, that one is the sort of strongest of the kind of altered reality type images. So 3 completely different pictures, but all 3 of these are 20.
Right. Oh, let's start at this end. So, Corvus is by Eddie from Oldham. He had to break their nose to take that picture. Nuthatch is by Brianna from Oldham, our youngest.
Well done. Excellent. Super shot.
And Samelia is by Sandra from Oldham. Right. Okay. Do we want to know any scores?
I think
A good idea.
we'd
You can,
like
you
to
can
see
unmute now if you want. Are we ready?
Yep.
Go for
Three
it.
marks. Get set. Here goes.
We won by
Wow.
40. We won by 43 points.
Oh, Rochdale had a very, very gallant attempt with 368, came third. Isle of Man with some super images there. Came second with 401, and I'm too embarrassed to say what we got.
I'm normally very pleased when the home team wins, because it means when you go out to the car park, the chances are there'll still be 4 wheels left on your car.
Oh, we always leave the wheels on. Often take the tyres off, but the wheels are always
Oh,
left
okay,
on.
the tyres then, yes.
well, thank you very much, Caroline, for scoring all these images. I'm sure it wasn't easy. Some cracking images there, and thank you very much for giving quite good feedback to a lot of the images, and you know helping, I'm sure, the people that put the images in for feedback as well. So
Okay.
thank
Did
you
you
very
want
much.
did you want an overall winning image?
It would be nice if you could do that.
Yeah, I thought in the script that you'd asked me to do that.
Yes.
So of the 3 that got the 20, it was a toss-up between the man and the corvid and the high key picture of the model. And I hummed and hawed over this for a very, very, very long time. And in the end, it comes down to personal choice, I guess, at this stage. and I thought it had to be the one with the man and the corvid, because I thought it was just so well put together, and it just had that kind of feeling to it, and I just loved it. So for me, that is the overall winner this evening.
Okay.
Okay,
Well,
well
that's
done,
well
Eddie.
Eddie.
Well done, Eddie.
You're
Okay,
not going to
well,
be popular with Brianna now.
yes.
Hard choice, very hard choice, because 3 completely different pictures.
Yes. No, well, you know, what a night, Caroline. Thank you again for helping us on our freeway battle with the clubs. I think everybody, a round of applause for Caroline for some great judging there. Okay, thank you everybody for joining. We look forward to seeing you again at some other point, and thank you again, Caroline, and take care to
You're
everybody.
very welcome. That was a very enjoyable evening.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
Yes, good night to everybody,
Thank you.
and we'll see you all
Night.
soon. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.
Night.
Bye.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot.
Bye. Good night.
Bye.
Good night.
Bye-bye.
Well done, Brianna.
Great.
Gosh, everybody's disappeared.
Yeah.
Don't disappear, stay and chat.
I went.
They all went.
Oh,
I went.